Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the February 5th, 2019 special meeting and work session of the Town Board of the Town of Ossining. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance, and please continue to stand for a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing. This week we learned of the tragic death of one of our young people. Gregory Jackson lost his life following a violent altercation in our village. We are all without words as we contemplate this senseless act of violence. We have full confidence in the Ossining Police Department to bring the perpetrator to justice. But in the meanwhile, we remember Greg as so many knew him, a bright, energetic, happy young man who was beloved by so many. We are all keeping his family and his many, many friends in our thoughts and prayers. Please join me in a moment of silence for Greg Jackson, one of our own. Thank you.
Councilwoman Shaw,
Present.
Councilwoman DeTore,
Present.
Councilman Wiltshire, Councilwoman Feldman,
Present.
and Supervisor Levenberg.
I am. So before we move into our special meeting, I would like to share some announcements about what we have been up to this week, as well as what's to come in the days ahead. Earlier today, I attended a press conference in Port Chester with the Westchester Municipal Officials Association and the New York Conference of Mayors to protest the governor's cutback of AIM, or Aid and Incentives for Municipalities funding, in the state budget. The roughly $152,000 in AIM funding that the town receives each year is on the chopping block, which would equate to a 4% increase to the general fund tax rate for 2020, just to maintain the status quo. AIM funding accounts for the little bit of unrestricted aid we receive from New York State, and that amount, based on population, has been frozen for almost a decade. We agree with the governor. We should do whatever possible to keep the lid on rising property taxes. However, as we continue to comply with the tax cap, this situation feels like we are being squeezed from both ends in what appears to be yet another unfunded mandate from New York State. I plan to go to Albany early next week to stand alongside my colleagues in local government and tell the governor and the state legislators that we rely on this funding to keep taxes low in Ossining, and we deserve more, not less, to keep our communities affordable, safe, and maintain the quality of life New Yorkers have come to expect. Tomorrow evening, Wednesday, February 6th, please join IFCA and the Ossining Microfund for a home ownership workshop presented by the Credit Smarts program between 6 and 8 p.m., sponsored by a generous grant from the Westchester Community Foundation. If you are considering buying your first home and don't know the first thing about how to finance it, this program is for you. If you are already a homeowner, please pass this information along. These organizations offer approachable support people and digestible presentations and information for folks looking to explore home ownership in Ossining. This Thursday, This Thursday, February 7th at 6:30 p.m., the Ossining Documentary and Discussion Series will be hosting a screening of I Am Not Your Negro, a film based on James Baldwin's last work before his passing that examines the decades-long struggle of American blacks. At this moment, when emboldened racists are gaining power and acceptance, this film is more important than ever. Stay after the screening for a thoughtful panel discussion moderated by our very own Councilwoman, Jackie Shaw. All are welcome to this free event in the Ossining Public Library's Boot Arts Theater. Our town historian and former Ossining Police Department Captain Scott Craven will be leading tours at this year's Eagle Fest, scheduled for this Saturday, February 8th in Croton. He promises lots of new adventures this year, so make sure to get your tickets now. This is one of my favorite events of the year. You don't want to let this one slip through your talons. Go to www.ttown.org to secure your spot today. After you work up a sweat spotting eagles around town, you're invited to the Friends of 49 annual pasta dinner and basket raffle, sponsored by Boy Scouts of America Troop 49, between 6 and 8 p.m. on February 9th and held at St. Augustine's School on Route 9. Enjoy a pasta dinner and great conversation for just $10 per adult and $6 per child. Can I just double check? Saturday is February 9th or 8th?
9th.
Okay.
Right.
Eagle Fest is
The 9th.
Saturday, February 8th. That was just, I misspoke. Okay.
Saturday, February 9th.
Yeah, Saturday, February 9th. Okay. On February 9th, also, and held at St. Augustine's School on Route 9, enjoy a pasta dinner and great conversation for just $10 per adult and $6 per child. And don't forget to participate in the raffle. Proceeds go to benefit the scouting program. Call Jack Riley at 941-7407. It is from 6 to 8 p.m. On Sunday, February 10th, between 4 and 7 p.m., come down to Demeter's Tavern and Sports Bar in Tarrytown. Yes, you do have to leave Austin for this one. And test your knowledge against other teams. Bring your own team or come ready to make some new friends. Tickets are $25 in advance or $30 at the door, and all proceeds go to benefit the Ossining Children's Center. That's why we're sending you down to Tarrytown. Visit OssiningChildrenCenter.org to learn more and get your early bird tickets. The snow squall last week caused the cancellation of the Westchester County Housing Needs Public Forum, which County Executive Latimer has rescheduled for Monday, February 11th at the Community Center in Ossining, so please consider attending. Co-sponsored by IFCA and Neighbors Link, the County Executive wants to hear what you think about the availability, accessibility, and affordability of housing in Westchester County. This forum will take place between 6 and 8 p.m. Be sure to come and make your voice heard by Westchester County as they draft their housing needs assessment. And I do believe that our own Councilwoman DeTore is involved in the housing task force. Is that what it's called? That's been a leader in getting this effort for a countywide assessment to take place.
Along with the Nonprofit Housing Coalition.
Thank you for your other many hats that you wear. While Thursday, February 14th is Valentine's Day, don't forget that February 13th is known to some as Galentine's Day, a chance to give some love to the special ladies in your life. Looking for some place to celebrate? Bella Maya Day Spa in Briarcliff Manor has your back. For just $10 per person, come for chair massages, an eyebrow shape-up, collagen eye treatments, and even a smoky eye application. While you snack on appetizers from the tasty table and sip wine, what could be better? Spoil yourself for a change right here in town. Call 236-3711 to save your spot for this fun girls' night out on Wednesday the 13th. As for Valentine's Day plans, go no further than North State Road in the lovely unincorporated part of Ossining for the fantastic restaurants we have right here in our community. Have a cozy supper with your sweetie at Terra Rustica or Flames. Enjoy a hearty dinner at the Briars or split a decadent fried ice cream at Maya Riviera after a couple margaritas. Trust me on this one. There are so many wonderful options on Pleasantville Road in Briarcliff or in downtown Ossining. Why not try someplace new? Wherever you plan to sidle up to your loved ones, be sure to make reservations ASAP. You will be in good company. I hope you will join me as I plunge into the mighty Hudson River in our own Engle Park on Sunday, February 16th for the Galata House second annual Escape from Sing Sing Polar Plunge. At 12 noon, weather permitting, we will be plunging into the river to benefit local families in need and scholarships for Ossining High School students. Teams and individuals can register at www.galatahouse.org. That's 2 L's and 2 T's. Finally, I am excited to share that the Village of Ossining has invited the town to take part in a water-saving initiative that could help you buy a high-efficiency toilet with a $200 voucher. To see if your property is eligible, visit villageofossining.org/T as in toilet, R as in replacement, P as in program. Do any of my colleagues have any announcements? And if not, then let's begin the special meeting. I got all of yours? Oh, any? Okay.
It's income tax time. So for people who qualify, IFCA will be preparing income tax returns for free. Again, you must qualify, but if you're interested, please call IFCA at 914-941-5252 and schedule an appointment.
Any other? And MBK's mentor night happening yet? Is that happening this week? Tomorrow night? Yeah, I feel like it is too. Okay. Anyway, My Brother's Keeper, I think one of the first big initiatives already took place, but the other one that is happening is there's a match night happening, we believe, tomorrow night at Ossining High School or middle school. We're going to try to get some of the details out, but mostly people who are part of this program are going to be matched up with adult mentors to help guide them through middle school and high school. And this is a program that is targeting our young men of color in our middle school and high school. It actually starts at 5th grade. So we're looking forward to continuing to support that program in any way that we can. And we don't yet have the box, I don't think, outside. But we are willing to put a box outside to collect clothing, business and smart casual clothing for young men who might be sizes that will fit people in from 5th grade to through high school. Any size? No, not any size, not baby size. So yes, tiny sizes through adult sizes. So yes, if you have any of those sorts of clothes and would like to donate them to this program, you can bring them to the town supervisor's office until such time as we have a box downstairs to collect them. Sound good? All right, fantastic. Okay, so with that, we will move into our special meeting. And I ask that Madeline Zahac, would you please take us through the resolutions?
I would be very pleased to do so. Resolution A, contract Interstate Fireworks. Resolved that the Town Board of the Town of Ossining hereby authorizes the supervisor to sign an agreement with Interstate Fireworks, Inc., P.O. Box 260, Roland, Pennsylvania, to furnish a display of fireworks on July 3rd, 2019, and with a rain date of July 8th, 2019, for a contract amount totaling $28,900.
Do we have a motion? So we are excited to be thinking about warmer weather and also to be working with Interstate Fireworks again in 2019. Although their price did go up nearly 10% this year, we know we are still getting an exceptional deal for our Independence Day celebration. They are a small shop and they have been hit with costs that are related to the increase in tariffs on China, coming from China. So that's a way that we've been locally affected here. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And just to remind everybody that our fireworks, again, are scheduled for July 3rd, which is a Wednesday this year. We do have that rain date of July 8th, as mentioned in the resolution.
Okay. Resolution B, appointment working foreman, highways, Town Highway Department. Resolved that the Town Board of the Town of Ossining hereby appoints Kevin Moore, MEO, to the probationary period position of working foreman highways in the Town of Ossining Highway Department, effective April 1st, 2019, at an annualized salary of $92,014.
Do I have a motion?
Second.
At the recommendation of our Superintendent of Highways, Michael G. O'Connor, the Town Board has agreed to promote our motor equipment operator, Kevin Moore, into the position of working foreman for the Town Highway Department. Last summer, we were officially notified by our current foreman, Mateo Velardo, that he would be hanging up his neon vest at the end of March 2019, and we are going to miss him terribly. However, we know that Kevin has worked very closely with Mateo and with his predecessor, John Martin, for almost 2 decades, and that he is up for the challenge. Kevin is here tonight with us, and we are excited for him to step up into this vital role for us here in Ossining. Our unincorporated residents love their highway department, and we are confident that Michael G., Kevin, and their crew will not let you down. And we are also very cognizant of the fact that Mr. Kevin Moore has been doing a lot of training recently and going to a lot of programs to get himself prepared for his next step. So with that, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? And we do have Mr. Moore here in the audience. Congratulations. Would either one of you, Michael G., would you like to say anything before? Would you like to come up and then Kevin, maybe you want to say something following?
Is this on?
Besides, thank you very much.
This on? Okay, first of all, I want to congratulate Kevin. He's worked very hard for the town and for the town highway department. He's filled many tasks. He's rise to the occasion to go over and above to see that jobs got done. I can't go on. I'll be going on all night. I'm very proud to interview. There was an interview process. There was two employees from the town that applied for the position. We had a process that was interviewed by one of the board members, and Kevin was selected for the position of working foreman, and I'm very proud of him and what he has accomplished on the job and off the job. He's known throughout the community. He is a coach. He's a referee. He's done judging officials for many sports activities, and throughout Westchester County and this particular region of Westchester County, particularly Ossining. And he's given so much back in that life that it's just great to work with him. He brings so much to the table. I think we're all going to be proud of his task and his responsibilities, how he undertakes them in the future.
Thank you very much. And now, Kevin Moore, would you like to come up and say a couple words?
It looks like a no.
I just want to say thank you very, very much. It won't be that long. Now I'm very nervous. I just want to let you know that I'm going to work very hard for all the residents, and I appreciate being appointed, and I hope I won't let you down. I really mean that.
No, you won't. No, you won't.
Thank you very
Thanks
much.
so much and congratulations.
Can I get a picture of you with Kevin and his family?
Sure, how about the whole board? Come on.
Come on, gang. Granddaughter doesn't
with this family.
Yeah.
It's
the whole board.
Oh, boy, come on.
All right.
Everybody. It's a team effort at the Town of Austin. She doesn't play basketball.
Oh, thank you.
That's good. We got you all.
One more.
Sorry, just push that back in. I just wanted to get it out
Family.
and myself out of the way.
Also, we expected you to stay for the whole meeting. Oh, I forgot to- sorry. It's supposed to be a long. I said we expected you were going to stay for the whole meeting.
no, you don't
No,
My granddaughter didn't eat.
Councilman Wiltshire has a mint.
So you have some Twizzlers.
We have Twizzlers. Okay. All right. Anyhow, where are we? Next up.
That would be Resolution C, Finance Capital Project 2019, 5213, 2019 Freightliner Town Highway. Resolved that the town board. Resolved that the town board of the town of Ossining hereby authorizes opening a 2019 capital project number 2019-5213 entitled 2019 Freightliner for the town highway department with a project budget of $218,032. The project will be funded from bond proceeds.
Do I have a motion? Second. So you may remember that a few weeks back, the town board passed a bond resolution for the purchase of 5 new trucks. 2 for our Parks Department, 2 for our Highway Department, and 1 for Dale Cemetery. We are opening these capital projects tonight so that we can begin the ordering process. One of them will take more than a year to build, but we should have the rest of them in operation by mid-March. Fingers crossed, no more snow until then, or until December. We will be fine with that too. Special thanks to our town comptroller, Tom Warren, and Deputy Comptroller Dale Ferreira for their work with our bond council and setting up these accounts, and of course to Maddie Zahach for all of her hard work, and to our department heads and our mechanic for helping us determine which trucks in our fleet, several of which are more than 20 years old, needed to rise to the top of the list for replacement. And Michael G., we're about to pass the resolution
That you've been asking
for all these trucks. All those in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed?
Not opposed,
Oh,
but I have
okay. Sorry, go ahead.
I have
Discussion.
a question. You, how many, what is it, 4?
5.
5.
Yes.
I have a problem with that. When you get 5 vehicles at the same time, they 5 vehicles break down at the same time.
Well,
Well,
one
they're not all
won't be here
coming
for
at the
almost
exact same
over a
time.
year.
Okay, 1, 2, okay. One's not gonna make no,
Well, unfortunately, they've all broken down now. So I don't think by waiting and having broken down vehicles that can't be used to plow our roads is unfortunately,
Well,
This is
gotta
how-
do what we gotta do. but
exactly.
In the future, we should think about that.
Absolutely.
Before we order it.
Absolutely, we should try to always
Well,
try
this
to
is probably
stagger.
exactly the reason why we're in the situation now, that they all broke
yes.
down together.
Partially, yes.
So staging them somehow
Stagger-
over the next
stagger
couple of
them.
years is probably a good idea.
Stagger and it will help.
I mean, I will also say that all of these vehicles are used different daily, but they're also used different amount of time and in different ways, because one is for the highway, two for parks, and then two for, I'm sorry, I said the wrong. One is for cemetery, two for parks, two for highway, and one of the highway trucks isn't really going to come in until a year out. So, because it's an international and it needs to be ordered and manufactured and back to specs and everything. So hopefully, but yes, you're absolutely right. And we wish that they hadn't all broken down at the same time. Okay. So with that, I think I will take, no, we still have
We're all,
more, sorry.
all set
No, we're all done, right?
with that one.
Oh, with that one.
Yeah.
We just did one at a time. Okay.
Resolution D, Finance Capital Project 2019-5214, 2018 Dodge Ram 3500 Town Highway. Resolved that the Town Board of the Town of Ossining authorizes opening a 2019 capital project 2019-5214 entitled 2018 Dodge Ram 3500 with a plow and crane for the Town Highway Department with a project budget of $71,518. The project will be funded from bond proceeds.
Do we have a motion?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Resolution E, Finance Capital Project 2019-5215, 2018 Dodge Ram 3500 Town Parks. Resolved that the Town Board of the Town of Ossining authorizes opening a 2019 capital project 2019-5215 entitled 2018 Dodge Ram 3500 with a plow for the Town Parks Department with a project budget of $56,112. The project will be funded from bond proceeds.
Do we have a motion?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Resolution F, Finance Capital Project 2019-5216, 2018 Dodge Ram 4500 Town Parks. Resolved that the Town Board of the Town of Ossining authorizes opening a 2019 capital project 2019-5216 entitled 2018 Dodge Ram 4500 with a plow for the Town Parks Department with a project budget of $96,081. The project will be funded from bond proceeds.
Do we have a motion?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Resolution G can be removed from the agenda. Resolution H, Finance Capital Project 2019-5217, 2018 Dodge Ram 4500 Town Cemetery. Dale Cemetery. Resolved that the Town Board of the Town of Ossining authorizes opening a 2019 capital project 2019-5217 entitled 2018 Dodge Ram 4500 for Dale Cemetery with a project budget of $63,029. The project will be funded from bond proceeds.
Just wanted to double check the numbers since we had those two resolutions.
Right. So I spoke with our deputy town controller today. The number for the cemetery vehicle came in a little bit lower, but since she wanted to match the original bond resolution, we went with a higher number, and we'll be adjusting the capital project down after we purchase the truck. So the 63,029 is where we're staying, even though we're actually purchasing it 58,371.
Okay. All right. So do I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Now, with that, I think I'm now asking for a motion to go into our work session.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So thank you, everyone. This evening, our work session, we're going to be starting with two departmental reports. I would first like to invite our Police Chief, Kevin Sylvester, to join us. Thank you, Chief, for taking the time during what has been an unbelievably difficult couple of weeks. We very much appreciate it. Ooh,
Okay,
Okay.
I moved it, so I'll take full responsibility for having to readjust here. Yikes. Okay, stay. Good evening. Thanks for having me tonight. What I want to do for my report is I want to go over a lot of what we did. January is a good opportunity for us to recap 2018 as a whole, and then I want to talk about what our plans are and objectives for 2019, some programs that we have, and every year we try to come out with a few new things that we're going to be working on and how we can provide a better service. So looking back at 2018, it's always a lot of fun for me to do this because we sometimes forget half of the things that we did. 12 months is a long time, and you look back and it feels like it was forever ago, but In 2018, we started implicit bias training with Dr. Bryant Marks as part of the 21st Century Policing Project. One of only a few departments in Westchester County that have ever taken that on, and proud to see that other departments, we received a flood of phone calls after that, and other departments took that on as well. And it's really spreading throughout Westchester County, and even 9 months later, we're seeing the benefits from that still. In addition to all of our Facebook and Twitter and Nextdoor and Nixle and all the other social media stuff, in 2018, we added Nextdoor, which is a private social media platform, which we don't use quite as much as we should, but we're building on that each time and trying to get that. For those that haven't seen it yet, check out nextdoor.com, and you can sign up. You have to verify your address, so it's an opportunity for us to keep messages that we're sharing specifically with residents of Ossining. Generally goes by zip code, so we may have some Briarcliff people sneaking in, but we'll let them slide for now. You know, as we've gone through this year and we've been relatively fortunate with the weather so far, I looked back and saw how many power outages we dealt with last year, and holy cow, I have to believe that most of the branches that could fall have fallen, and thank God for that. But the result of that has been a measurable increase in our efficiency and our relationship with Con Edison, to a point where they call us by cell phone first before we have to reach out to them, and we're grateful for that. Among the year, we had Autism Awareness Month. We created a lending library in the lobby of the police station, which we continue to encourage people to come down and take books for free. So when you're down getting an accident report or picking up any other document you need to get from us, please have your kids take a book, because we support early literacy. We did Coffee with a Cop all over the town and village, including Briar Bagels on North State Road, Club Fit, and a number of other locations. At the end of school, we took over an ice cream truck, which I would like to hold as a secret that won't happen this year. It's going to happen this year because it was too much fun not to do twice. So last day of school, please don't buy ice cream for your kids, because we're going to be handing it out. The Village Fair, we continue to dunk cops, and I don't know how much longer they're going to put up with that, but they're good sports and they continue to do that. We played kickball, we played soccer, we played capture the flag, we went booking, where we hand out books. If you won't come to us and take a book from our lending library, we will drive them to your house and hand them to you. One way or another, you are going to read. We did not do a lip sync challenge, sorry. We brought back a program that we've been doing for a long time but haven't really advertised, as Child Safety Seat Installation Day, and it was something that we haven't done as a function at the police department. But in 2018, we not only did an event for that, but we paired it with a Touch a Truck Day, where the fire department and ambulance corps and all these folks came down, and allows kids to check out all of the first responder vehicles. This year, we plan on having at least 4 of those events where people can come to the police station, where we have a dedicated day. And even if you have a child safety seat already installed, feel free to bring it down and just have it checked out, because statistics from the National Highway Traffic Safety Association say that 70% of people have it wrong. So most of you should be coming getting your child safety seats checked out, if in fact you have those, or if you think you should have them. So we'll put out more about that when the time comes. Fireworks, man, I looked at the photos from that, and what a good time. We added to that, along with our Ossining Basics commitment, a craft project this year, and we're looking for ways already for 2019 on how we can improve ways to entertain your children while you go and wait for the show. We did movies in the park that included even dual language movies this year, because we love to partner with the school district. We played softball against the fire department, and we won. I'm looking at you, Manny DeCruz. That money all went to Ossining Little League football, because we want to protect the noggins. Hunger Action Month, we collected food, we repacked food at Feeding Westchester, we distributed food with the mobile food pantry at Ossining at Park School, and we're really grateful for our partnerships with them. It's an awesome organization run by a local resident. For the second year in a row, 2 years ago, we had assigned an officer at Ossining High School and moved Detective Walker to the middle school, so that we could double our ability to interface with students. This year, we assigned Officer Tompkins to Ossining High School, and Detective Walker remains in the middle school, so that we can have some continuity, because what we've recognized is that we need face time with these kids right from the minute they enter school through graduation, but most importantly, those adolescent years from middle school through high school. So we've continued to do that. Officer Tompkins is really making some progress, and I'll talk a little bit about what we're going to do with him. Detective Walker, you know, we're looking at what his role is going to be expanding and changing, as Ms. Cilio has announced that she'll be retiring. So always a chance when there's change to do different things, so we'll be looking at that. We did Trunk or Treat, where I know most of you were there and participated, so thank you for that. We love to make you dress up and be ridiculous too. It shouldn't just be on us. This year, we sadly lost Mario Conti, who was not only a 33 or 34-year auxiliary for us, but also a town court officer and somebody who dedicated his entire life to the community through the fire department and other ventures. In October, we also did Domestic Violence Awareness Month, where we did collections and we did panel discussions, and we published that. And that video is still out there for anybody that wants to see all of the services that are available. We did our 5K in Cedar Lane Park with the newly renovated pavilion, which was a blast, and raised money for kids that'll go to camp this summer. So even though that event is over, we're looking forward to the funds from that now going to the recreation department so that we can help some kids have a little bit more fun this summer. We also celebrated Breast Cancer Awareness Month and did some awareness things with that. And then in November, on Thanksgiving, we drove around and handed out turkeys. We didn't really advertise that all that much. It was sort of impromptu, but along with our partnership with Feeding Westchester, they found that some generous folks dedicated more turkeys than they could give out. So we actually sent police cars around the entire community and gave out turkeys as we went. Our officers then went to First Presbyterian Church on Thanksgiving and served dinner themselves to families in need. We're proud of Officer Hershowitz, who was named Rotary Employee of the Year, mostly because everything I just told you about was her responsibility. I think the entire list. That was cool. In December, it was a later announcement. We didn't really publish it until January because the AV stuff is sometimes hard to get together, our video operation. But we did Operation Holiday Cheer, where we did traffic enforcement, which is such an important aspect of our responsibilities, and handed out gift certificates to motorists instead of tickets. So always, anytime we have something like that, we can't afford to do it by ourselves. So absolutely thank you to High Q Electric, who sponsored the lion's share of that program, but also the Tasty Table, Capri Pizza. I'm going to go on Facebook and tell you about who all the sponsors were because I can't remember who all they were. But we had a whole bunch of sponsors that made that happen. It really was a great program. We said goodbye to Sergeant Ray DeBenedictis in December after 30 years of policing. And we welcomed Sergeant Mike Lance, who's now taken his place and is doing a bang-up job. In December, we drove around with Santa Claus and we handed out candy canes, and we're sorry, but not sorry to all the people who got scared of our sirens. But it's Santa, and these things happen, and that's how it goes. This year, I wrote a letter to the governor supporting legislation that would grant driver's licenses to all people, irrespective of their status, and I look forward to participating in conversations with our elected leaders at the state level to try and make sure that that becomes a functional program. In 2019, we've already started. January is usually pretty slow for us, but this week we had a dive-in movie, not a drive-in movie. We had a dive-in movie at the pool. That came at a time where, all right, let's jump into it. We had a horrible event last week where Gregory Jackson was murdered on James Street, and because of that, there are certain times where we can share lots of information with people, and we really pride ourselves on telling everybody everything that's going on. There are times where critical incidents happen, and in order to protect an investigation, we just cannot speak. I chose not to advertise that movie myself because I felt that it was inappropriate to talk about things we were doing for fun, albeit good for the community at a time when I couldn't bear to speak about the things that were really important. So I understand that 60 people still came to that movie without me telling them. So whoever's out there spreading the good news, thank you for that. I think it's DJ Johnny G who makes so many things happen for us. But the rec crew down there is really fantastic, and they made that happen. So I understand that a lot of people really enjoyed that movie and a night of swimming in the pool. We have recently purchased a drone. So we are looking forward to this year rolling out our unmanned aerial vehicle, a UAV program this year, which has a real serious law enforcement function of being able to give us eyes above, but it also has a lot of community benefits to it. It'll mainly be used for large events, things like the fireworks, the village fair, any other large events like that, which we did this year through a trial program with some other equipment. But we're going to be talking about that more as it comes out and informing the community of how it's going to be used so that nobody freaks out when we're flying overhead. It's a pretty non-invasive program in terms of what you see. Nonetheless, we understand that people have privacy concerns whenever something like this comes out. So folks can expect more conversation about that and just some education on how it's used. In light of the events that have happened, and this is something we've been talking about for months, but now obviously there's an urgency for this. We intend to form a youth advisory council, which is done in a lot of other communities, where what we heard during some programs, during the capstone program at Austin High School, a few weeks ago, was that the students feel unheard. And they fully recognize that we have a ton of programs through Austin Basics and that we show a lot of kids movies, but that they don't feel that there's a lot of contact and a lot of recognition between adolescent, teen, young adult population and our police department. So that's one of the ways we can start the conversation with them. Conversations are nice, doing is better. So my objective for that is to find ways that we can better serve that segment of our community and then put some plans into action and actually make something happen. Our large training evolution for this year is going to be a multidiscipline active shooter training, which is response to active shooter. We're going to be doing it in the schools, and that's going to be rescue focused this year. So we're going to be working with our emergency medical services folks to see how we work together and make that a more well-rounded approach. We're looking forward to some more promotions as we have vacancies and some hiring this year. We continue to battle with New York State and Westchester County over the issue of hiring town residents for the Village Police Department. We have not given that up, and I've taken a hard stance against that I will not move until that's changed. New York State has indicated that they understand our cause and they believe that there's an avenue for success. We need to convince the rest of our municipal partners at the county level that that's how things need to go. We look forward to participating in some legislative stuff going forward to protect that in the long term, but in the short term, I think that we have a way to make that work. So I'm looking forward to getting hiring this year. We have a number of vacancies. I would love to see some new young people getting jobs here. Fantastic stuff. We have a long series of outdoor events, which we are finalizing right now, some of them with new partners and really exciting stuff. And that's all I'm going to tell you about that. But definitely people should look forward to our summer programs this year because, what this really started as is the police department doing things on a shoestring budget. We sometimes had no money or very little money, and we've always been grateful for those that have contributed and helped us make this happen. And how that's evolved is now people have come around and said, well, you guys throw a really great party and we want to be a part of that. And now it's bringing resources to the table to where we can really professionalize some of the things that we've sort of just thrown together over the years. So we're really excited about the things that are coming out. And, as we nail down dates for those, I think this year what you'll find is less surprise, more pre-planned. And that's a good thing. So people can figure out when they want to hang out with us and how. And lastly, this will be the year that we're going to re-energize the Civilian Police Complaint Review Board. There's not an indication that we have a major issue with corruption here or any other problem, but it's an important function to make sure that everybody's held accountable for the job they do. Very few times you'll hear cops say they're excited about this because, every extra layer of supervision is anxiety causing. But at the same time, I have such confidence in the folks that I work with that I think this is a great opportunity to show exactly how professional they are. On the bright side, we wear cameras and just about every minute of our day is recorded. So there's really no question. If somebody did nothing wrong, it'll be right there on camera. The board gets to watch the video. They've been involved all along. This is the year we want to get them more involved in things and make sure that they're doing. We want to do more training with them. And we have some members that are going to be leaving the board based on the time they've been there, and we're reappointing new people. So obviously we have to get new people trained up and available there. But it's a really good program. We are the only active civilian complaint review board in all of Westchester County. It's something that we should be proud of, that we are proud of. But we also need to make sure that it's a strong organization, that it's fortified, that it serves the purpose that it's out there to do, so that we can keep going. That is my 2018-19.
Okay, don't go away.
On that?
Quick question, Chief, about that last comment that you made. Who actually does the appointing? Is that the village board?
That is from the village board, yes. So the composition of the Civilian Complaint Review Board is it's 5 civilian members, 1 civilian alternate, and then there's 2 police officers that are there. One is a supervisory rank, either a sergeant or lieutenant, and the other is is patrol level. And then there's an alternate for each of them as well. The police officers that are there are recommended by me, but everybody is appointed by the village board.
Just out of curiosity, might that be something that we should consider asking for one person to be appointed by the town board?
That was addressed in the IMA, and it was specific that the town would be, that it would be handled by the village. I'd have to check, but I know it was a discussion in the original round.
Okay.
That
I don't remember seeing it, but that doesn't mean it's not there. It just might have been something I skipped over. Okay.
I don't think that was the issue. I think the issue is that because it would be it's a longer conversation than just tonight, but we can discuss.
Thank you for that. And then the other thing I just wanted to also mention was to thank you also for participating in Organ Donor Enrollment Day. That was great, and we really appreciate that. And also that the softball game was played at Gerlach Park. And
Yes, with the newly renovated field and
right,
all, yeah.
Newly renovated field. So thanks for taking advantage of all of our town resources. We appreciate it because we like that you are in the community, that we represent, and appreciate that you're reaching out to all of our constituents in that way, and in all of the positive ways that you do. And also just again to thank you for all the hard work already preparing for the fireworks. You know, we're starting to prepare for the summer, and for the great help with the storm, all the storm recovery. And we really appreciate your partnership on that with us, and just really helping us all along the way every single day. So thank you. We feel like you're a great resource to the town as well as to the village. Does anybody have comments or questions?
When I was wearing my IFCA hat earlier, we had a meeting with some community stakeholders, and I was really glad to hear about the Youth Advisory Board and the fact that there's going to be a greater focus on teens and high school students. That actually was something that came up, so we will definitely keep you informed. I think that we all recognize that that's an area that probably, I don't want to say we've neglected, but it's a difficult area. You know, we want to make sure that as kids get older, they feel as cared for as they did when they were in park school. So I think that's really great and very encouraged to hear that. So.
Okay, I'll go.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Thank you for all the community outreach you do. I don't think many people know how much you actually do, and you get out there, and I think it's wonderful that you get out there. The thought I had on the Youth Advisory Council is that you might want to touch base with the MBK advisors at the high school and AMD, because they would have people that would probably be interested in serving on this. That might be a good resource for you.
Yeah, we I had actually I spoke to Ray Sanchez about this just before we came here. He's very excited about it, so we're gonna look at all the different avenues for who and how and what. You know, it's tough. There's such a responsibility to serve every part of the community. You know, a lot of people argue, and we get messages all the time, this isn't a police function, but it is. And if we want to prevent things from happening, not just respond to them, you've got to address the people that are in front of you. My hope is that through the work that we do, we inspire, like obviously the school district is heavily involved in everything. You know, we just hope that more organizations are inspired by not necessarily that we're doing better than anybody else, but just our commitment to these things. And hopefully we get more partnership from other groups, because there's only so many hours in the day. And while everybody might not know all the things that we do, my wife knows. And she said, come home. But it's a labor of love. It's something that we really do enjoy to do. And, you know, it's just every opportunity looking for one more way we can expand and branch out.
I also neglected to say thank you for your advocacy for driver's licenses for all. The town board has also been supportive of that, as well as the implicit bias training, which is what you started off with. And I remember that you telling me a little bit about getting a little bit of pushback at the very beginning of that, and then having it really fully embraced by everybody who participated, and that is fantastic. And finally,
I really do. I have to say we have an incredible staff, and you know, I think a big portion of that is really attributed to the town and through the IMA, because when we took this on, we had a big influx of young people be hired here. And, you know, when you have that big change, it changes the dynamic in the building. And we have a staff that's more than half what we call young, not necessarily in age, but in time as a cop, because we age from the day we get hired, not from the day we're born, and very, very quickly. But you know, it changed the dynamic, and those folks come in, and they're all very new when we went through this, so they really they embraced it, and even those that didn't really say that they loved it while they were there, they've really come to think about it. And we had a lot of really engaging conversations after it was over. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be able to do that, and it absolutely is. Thanks to the town that this dynamic has changed in our department and gives us the opportunity to have these conversations. So it's been fun.
I would be remiss if I did not congratulate you for your recent election to third vice president of New York State Chiefs Association. I think that means that you're in line to be president in 210.
Yeah, it's
right?
yes, yes. Along with all the programs I do, my wife is thrilled that I've taken on another 4-year commitment for something.
Okay.
Way to go! Yeah, it's a good organization. They do a lot of advocacy work on the legislative front for things in criminal justice stuff. I feel like this area is not always as involved. You know, when you look at the dynamic of police departments across New York State, there's a big influence from the upstate crowd, and then sort of New York City is its own country in terms of, you know, within New York State, and then there's Long Island. So it's been 10 years since Westchester County's had a representative on that board, and I felt like it was time, and an opening came available. So I'm glad to represent Ossining at that level.
Thank you for stepping up and congratulations.
Thank you.
Thanks for your great report. Anybody, do you have?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to thank you for all the programs and outreach you do in our community. You can see the difference that it makes and all the innovative things you come up with that are constantly changing, as you say, to keep the community engaged and interested. That's appreciated. I had one question about your book program. Those of us who have kids who are getting older and some of our books, do you accept donations of fairly good condition books?
We don't collect books, but the school district does. So what happens is they have, we'll call them the central repository for this. At the district, they have a room there where they store all the books. They sort them by grade. And then when we need books, we call them and we say, like, look, our big ask is not teenagers for books in headquarters. We have a huge need for books for the younger kids. So that's really who comes down. So when we call, we say, look, I need Park School Brookside books, and we get bins of those. So I'll get you a contact for who collects those at the district level, but they collect them, and then other organizations may have more older kids coming in, and they would deliver those books to them. So that's how they'll take them for sure. It's just a matter of how they get distributed.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Wonderful.
And
Thanks
again, thanks for everything.
No, they're always good to see you.
Same here.
Likewise.
All right, thanks so much, Chief.
All right,
And next up, we have our receiver of taxes, Holly Perlowitz, to give us an update on what's going on in the town tax office. But before you begin, I would like to recognize Receiver Perlowitz and your stellar staff, Patty and Martha, for doing such an exceptional job receiving our taxpayers in the last days of school tax collection last week. On behalf of all of our taxpayers, thank you for making an unpleasant task a little brighter for so many of us.
Thank you. Thank you. I was thinking as I was listening to Chief Sylvester that he was going to be a very tough act to follow. There's not a whole lot exciting about the tax office, but somehow we have fun. And
You're not giving out ice cream with.
No,
Chocolates.
but
They
I
give out
am
chocolates.
giving out chocolate, and that has been something that's been enjoyed by many of our taxpayers. January was a very, very busy month. It was the second half of school taxes were due, and we collected over $33 million in 1 month, and 40% of it came in the last 4 days. So there was quite a lot of activity. But I'm happy to say that in the last year, more and more people are starting to use the online system. We're up over 1,000 people using it, so that's wonderful. We're also, we installed a slot in the post office, and again, we had it available for the September collection, and some used it, but it's increased a little bit more with this collection. And I just keep on advertising it on our email blast, and the postmaster's been very helpful also with putting up signs in the post office for that use. I can also say that the email alerts that we're doing are very well received. I keep on building that group of people. It is very frustrating to me that we have over 10,000 parcels, and still I only have about close to 1,900 people signed up. But that's increasing all the time. And unfortunately, every time anyone has to come in and pay a delinquent tax, it is like a requirement for me to get them to sign up for these email blasts, because people are very busy and they just forget. And particularly the school collection, where one bill goes out and it has 2 vouchers on it, people have tried all sorts of things to remind them. They put messages on their computers and on their, all sorts of, I've heard all sorts of ways of trying to remind themselves, but the email blasts really do help. So again, I just keep on encouraging people, and even people who say, well, I'm not a computer person, I say, well, give me your child's name. I'm sure they'll get it, just someone to remind them. I've also been wanting to, and I'm going to focus on it next year, and just seeing if I can get some sort of contact at all the fire stations. I'm sure I can get help with that. And anyone in the community that has some sort of social media platform, I'm always very grateful to Dana for announcing this on the weekly updates while we're in collection mode. But just all of the organizations that we have, just to get the message out there that that taxes are due, because the vast majority, and I can tell by the number of people who are still delinquent, which is less than 6%. So of our 10,800 parcels, we've only got about 690 people, 90 parcels that are still have delinquent taxes for 2018, and some of those are still coming in. The people mailed them on the last day. I guess it's kind of a game. Let's see if I can pay my taxes on the very last day, and for the most part that's fine. But with the use of people using online banking, not our online system, but online banking with one of the major banks or the smaller banks as well, those institutions don't use a postmark date, and we're getting ones in that people paid it on the last day of the month and expected their bank to mail it out. And the way banks work, as a former banker, I can tell you, plus I've talked to the banks, is they aggregate everyone who's making a payment and then they mail them out, one envelope. So I know I often get envelopes from some of the major financial institutions with 15, 20 checks from individuals. So they're waiting and then they're sending them and they don't have the postmark date. And I've tried to educate our taxpayers on that, but we're still having an issue with that. And I understand they're very frustrated. They asked for the payment to be made on perhaps January 25th, but it didn't get to us until February 3rd, February 4th, because the institution waited. So some of it is just an education, and painful education when there's a penalty involved. So the email blasts are working, the online system is working, and we're doing our very best to continue to have an open and a very customer service centered approach when people come in. I have adopted the thought with people in my office that nobody's clicking their heels to get into our tax office. So the least we can do is get them their information fast and efficiently and be friendly and helpful. And when people come up, the village and the town both collect taxes in the month of January. I made it a requirement that if anyone came in and they were paying their school taxes and we can tell that they live in the village, just to remind them about the village tax as well, and just as much as we can do to make our taxpayers happy. So, all right, so that is about all I have on our tax work. I did want to take a few minutes to also distribute the delinquent report. Sorry, I should have done this earlier. I just thought it was a good idea to give you a snapshot of how we're doing on our delinquent liens, and hopefully you'll all have them in front of you momentarily. So in total, we have 64 liens, and I think that's always sad to me that there's a lien on anyone's property, but I think that's, again, pretty impressive when you think about the number of parcels we have and that we collect for. So we have 3 properties that are currently slotted they're from 2016 liens for an auction in over the summer, and one of them we're working with the taxpayer on a payment plan, and then we have 18 properties that have a 2018 judgment, and again there's one of them that we're working on a payment plan with, and then there's 43 properties with 2018 liens, and that number typically a good number of them are reduced. And I can tell you that there are also there are some where there are multiple properties by the same owner, and I'm hopeful that those will all resolve it as well. So that's, again, just to give you a snapshot of 64 liens, one of which, by the way, there are 3 that we're working on a payment plan and they're in process. There's one that has a successful payment plan and is paying on time and according to the arrangement that we've made. And we're always delighted to try to help as best as we can when people come to us, and we will have conversations with them again to the extent that we can by law to enter into these plans. So I just wanted you to have that sense, that perspective as well. So at that point, again, I give out candy, not ice cream. I'd be open to answer any questions you may have.
Does anybody have any questions?
Why are you so wonderful?
Well,
It disappoints me that some of the people who always that have gotten it all paid off after a long time to see them
yeah.
baffles me.
Well, as Councilwoman DeTore can tell you, because we've worked together on this, some people, it's a financial literacy thing. They need some financial management, and realizing that you have hard times, and if you're not going to ever recover, you may have to make some changes in your life. And I would hope, and obviously I can't give any advice in my position, but there are many resources in our town and around the county that are intended to help people make decisions about when they just can't afford anymore this particular property, to sell it and get into something that's more comfortable for them. So you're right, some repeatedly get on this and may need to make some decisions. Okay.
Thank you for
Once
being.
again, yes, thank you for your great customer service, all of your efforts to make it easier for people to pay on time, and all the work that you're doing now to help people avoid foreclosure.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you.
So much.
Take
Have
care.
a great night. And we will take up these payment plans and get back to you. Okay? Okay, moving right along. Next up, I wanted to share with you where we are with Project Forward, which is the grant-funded initiative that we named to learn about the community's appetite for finding efficiencies in our government structure. After having hired a consultant to create a comprehensive website to refresh Ossining residents on our governmental structure and budgets, we asked folks to fill out an online survey related to 2 specific concepts. The first is to eliminate the elected position of highway superintendent and change it to an appointed position. And the other is to merge the offices of tax receiver and town clerk after eliminating both elected positions. As the town board, by state law, is not authorized to act unilaterally to take away elected positions, we've solicited public input on whether this seems like a good idea before we prepare for the next steps, which would require putting the matters to a vote via referenda. After having collected the survey results, which were overwhelmingly in favor of the concepts, and holding 2 public listening sessions in January, we are feeling confident that the public continues to be interested in learning more, and that means we have some work to do. Let me be clear, this does not mean we are done listening. We will continue to be open to feedback throughout this process, but the fact is that if we are to hold these referenda later this year, there is a timeline that we must stick to. And the next step would be to prepare the local law or local laws, I'm not 100% sure if it's one for all or individual and hold a public hearing on whether we should hold any or all of the referendum. We figured this is a good time to review the questions we got at the listening sessions and to put some meat on the bones of these ideas. So with that, I want to talk a little bit about, and I'm going to hunt to Maddie to talk a little bit about what some of the questions that had come up, and I'm just going to grab those. Hold on a second. Had been, and also I'd like to thank Councilwoman Shaw, who sort of did a little bit of a recap of what she thought some of the issues that were highlighted that came up in some of our listening, our community conversations in the cafe and the library. One of which, I'm just going to actually go through your questions, Councilwoman Shaw. I think I just answered, which is why is it something that the board has to vote on, and that's because by state law, elected positions, that's not something we get to decide on. If we wanted to move from elected to appointed, elected positions go back to the people to make a decision, and that means going to a vote. And that is why, of course, we want to make sure that we reach out to the public in a way that gives an opportunity for anybody to weigh in and be engaged in the conversation about if it makes sense to move away from elected positions for these three offices. Also, we wanted to clarify at least briefly some of the tasks and skill sets that are needed in each of these positions to show how we would be able to allocate those responsibilities and tasks that are required differently and still be effective. So, and in that same conversation, we'll talk a little bit about what the responsibilities of the deputies in the receiver's office and the clerk's office are, so that we can talk a little bit more about, which we spoke a little bit about in our public community conversations, what it would look like if responsibilities were now in the hands of the deputies for certain tasks. So we can talk a little bit about that. And I think that that's where I'm going to stop for right now and let you discuss.
Okay. Hello. So I prepared for each of the board members a packet of some things that we've been putting together here. So sort of the top sheet is where we are at as far as the savings are concerned that we're considering, and basically how we got there. The next couple of pages are the Westchester County Civil Service job description for the three positions. So we have a town clerk, we have a receiver of taxes, and then we have a town superintendent of highways. And if I'm not going in an order that makes this clear, feel free to redirect me. When we're talking about the position of superintendent of highways, right now we have an elected superintendent of highways, and the way that we've been looking at this is to basically shift it from elected to appointed, but the job description with Westchester County Civil Service remains precisely the same. So that's going to be the third and fourth pages of the packet that you have. This is the printout of the qualifications and the tasks and responsibilities for a town superintendent of highways. This becomes a competitive position if it's no longer an elected position. So basically, how we see it is that if the elected position were to be eliminated, it would basically just flip like a light switch to be exactly the same job responsibilities and functions, but now by an appointed person off of a competitive list. So for Westchester County Civil Service, competitive positions means you have to take an exam. You have to do well enough on the exam to be reachable at the top of the list, and then you can be appointed by any municipalities who canvass that list. So basically, we would be setting it up so that it would be someone appointed off of one of those competitive lists. And the way that we're looking at it right now, as far as the savings is concerned, is that we foresee it would be a part-time position, at least to begin, with full administrative staffing. So right now, as the board's aware, we have two part-time administrators in the office, and that's down from what used to be a full-time administrator in the office. So we're looking to sort of flip those positions, if you will, and then going back to the front page, if you look at the top half, basically showing what we determine the savings might be in that situation on an annual basis, based on that staffing arrangement. Is that sort of the direction that you wanted me to go in this conversation?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. And again, the just to be clear, because sometimes I think the word
Mhm.
administrative
Clerical.
positions in the highway department. So right now we have two part-time clerical people who are basically covering the phones, covering the payroll and
Invoices. Procurement.
Procurement, and a lot of the the office related tasks, filling out reports. Is there and basically working on paper, essentially the paperwork that goes along with all of the functions of the highway department. And then we have an acting foreman, which, for example, we just appointed Kevin Moore to the position of acting foreman to take over for Mateo Velardo. And they're really the boots on the ground who have an understanding of what all of the weekly tasks are, as well as the daily tasks. And they're really the ones who are responsible for assigning each of the men, because they're all men right now, to the different tasks out in the field. The highway superintendent serves a supervisory role to oversee and make sure that, and you can see in some of the job descriptions what is required. So go ahead.
So we would have only a part-time superintendent, not a full-time. How many hours does our current superintendent work?
His hours vary. It's based on a 40-hour work week, I believe, with Westchester County Civil Service is what Mr. O'Connor is currently working.
And we feel that we don't need a highway superintendent for the full-time. Don't they get called out during any highway anything? I mean, isn't the superintendent in charge of everything?
So if we go to the job description,
Right.
and I want to sort of preface this by saying that, we all know Mr. O'Connor, and we know that he's very passionate about his job, and we've gotten very lucky in that respect. If this continues to be an elected position, that may or may not be the case, right? But if you're pulling somebody off of an appointed list, not only do they have to have the qualifications as laid out by the county, which you'll see on the second page, which for those folks who are not looking at it is possession of a high school or equivalency diploma and 8 years of work experience where the primary function of the position was in road construction and or road maintenance, civil engineering or related field, including or supplemented by 3 years of supervisory and or administrative experience. So having somebody in that position to do the things that you see the TSH next to are really what we see as being the main functions of the person in that position. Many of the other functions on this list are things that certainly could be done by that person, but could also be done by other people.
Okay, so what is let's say we decided after a while that we thought we needed a full-time superintendent. What is
You can always raise the salary, but you can't lower it.
no, I get that, but what is the civil service salary for
We make it.
we make it?
We make it. So if we were to canvass the list, so
Right.
say we canvass the list and there are 10 people on the list, and when we send out our letters, we say, we're looking for someone to work at the Town of Boston Highway Department 20 hours a week and the salary is X. Everybody has to send their letter back saying, yes, I'm interested, but I will only work for Y. Or, yes, I'm interested in this, but I need 40 hours a week. So everybody will answer, whether they think that it's an appropriate thing for them or not. And then based on the people who are interested, we have to choose from those people.
All right, so whoever's at the top list, and we feel we can find somebody who really, Ostening's. I like the fact that we have somebody who knows Ostening.
You could also request a municipality-specific list.
Okay, so that's helpful. And you feel that, we're not going to have a higher turnover with the only part-time services? Like, hey, we only have a part-time job?
Why?
I don't know.
I think when we go back to the origin of this conversation, we think about who's going to fit those requirements, right? Somebody who already has easily 10, 15 years of experience. You might be looking at somebody who's already retired, right? Who's going to say, hey, I know this kind of stuff. I'm not, necessarily from here, but I understand how roads are maintained and, I'm collecting a pension, so I can't make a whole lot of money. And I think that this is a good fit for me.
Okay, fair.
And like I said, you can always increase the salary, but you can't lower it.
Okay. Interesting. Continue. Thank you.
That's about as much as I've got for this one.
Highway superintendent, questions?
So, so you said you were gonna switch for the clerical would then be full-time?
Yes. So this has sort of been, something that, Mr. O'Connor has wanted for a while. When we had the person who was full-time in that position retire, she knew the stuff like the back of her hand, and we said, gee, it would really be great if you could stay on with us. And she was doing a great job at doing it part-time. As you guys you've heard from Mr. O'Connor over the last years, the reporting requirements are getting a little bit more intense. We're now doing the online program for the calendar, which, requires a little bit more hands-on. We're pushing the department to do more purchase orders, which is giving the clerical people a little bit more to do. So the work is increasing, and I think a case could be made for having one full-time dedicated person to be over there instead of what we've been sort of doing, which is a patchwork to have coverage in the office. And I think this has been something that has been discussed, not only by this board, but by the prior board about restoring that to a full-time position simply because it seems like the need is there.
So, Liz made the point about, somewhat being on call. So with a part-time job in this context, is it 20 hours a week, or is there, if you're on call, like how?
Sure.
I'm just
Back to highway superintendent.
Yeah,
for the highway
it's sort of flexible. So I'm trying to think of an example of somebody without naming names that we already have. So if you were to say the salary for this position is $40,000 a year.
You can use John Hamilton.
Say it's $40,000 a year, and we expect you to work at least 20 hours a week. That's what we're going to be reporting to the New York State retirement system. So if they're not already collecting a pension, that's what we're reporting to the retirement system that they're working. And that, if they need to work over and above that, then they write it down. This is how many hours I worked, but the salary remains the same. They're not going to be getting overtime or anything like that. It's a salaried position. So we expect you to work 20 hours a week. That's what we think it'll take to get the job done. If you have emergencies or something like that, then we certainly expect you to respond. But like you said, similar to John Hamilton, he has his days that he comes into the office, but he's not billing us extra if he gets called out on a Friday night at 2:00 in the morning. That's part of the job, and he doesn't get paid anything extra for that.
By the way, he's extremely responsive no matter what.
Right.
So, so you know, he responds to emails and phone calls immediately.
Yeah.
On days that he's not in the office. And that would be the expectation.
Excuse me. And I also want to say, this is sort of, we're kind of going by feel. We know this because we talk to all the people in these departments, and we sort of have a good idea of the work that's involved. But there's nothing that says that any of this is set in stone. If we have somebody part-time and then we say, oh man, we really need someone to work more hours. Or if we have a full-time clerical person and we say, boy, this really is no longer necessary. We don't need to do this. This is what we think is the conservative place to aim. And we're seeing not a huge amount of savings, but an appreciable savings. It's less than $100,000 a year, but that's not peanuts.
In that department. And I think, and I would just like to make the point that we had Assemblywoman Galiff come to one of our community conversations. And she came with the perspective of having looked at many communities over time, and also knowing that, communities have benefited and been able to save greatly where they've managed to move in the direction of appointed positions. Specifically, she usually highlights the town of Cortland as one of those communities. It's something that when somebody said, well, it's really not that much money that I'm saving, it's not worth it to me to give up this or that. She mentioned, well, you have to start somewhere. And I think for us, again, we've been chipping away at some of these over the years, looking to our community partners for ways that we can better share and find efficiencies in the services that we find are duplicative, similar to what we did with the court, similar to what we did with the police, similar to what we do with our finance department, and the shared facility that we're in right now. If we want to continue to move in the direction of finding efficiencies or eventually looking, to establish one Ossining, if that's, that's certainly something that we've talked about and continues to be talked about, then this is helping us move in that direction. And I think that that's important to remember, that we started the municipal restructuring grant together with the Village of Ossining, and we hope to get back together with the Village of Ossining to move into some of these bigger areas of savings. But this is some of the groundwork that we feel needs to be done to get there. And again, I say we feel. These are recommendations that have come out over the years from many, many studies. It's not me, town supervisor, that's currently holding this position. It's many people over many years. These have been recommendations that have been made. How exactly the next step gets structured, we're going to have to feel out a little bit. It's not necessarily going to start out perfectly, and we're going to have to feel our way through to make sure that we can get to a place that what we want to do is we want to start with, nothing feels touched, right? Where nobody really feels any difference. We don't think anybody's going to feel a difference at this point with the kind of changes that we're suggesting. We feel like it's a stepping stone in a direction of looking at ways to, reduce the higher level positions to gain efficiencies. Again, anytime that you start looking for efficiencies, you don't cut the people at the bottom, you don't cut the guys in the plow trucks, because you still have the same number of road miles to plow, and you have the snowstorm, the snow falls, and just as you still need the guys out doing those jobs. So we're not looking to cut any of the services back or make them any different. We're just looking we're looking for efficiencies at the top, and we think that we can achieve those when we look at other communities that have done so, and have been servicing their community for many, many years, and our neighbors. And I pointed out, I think that town of Newcastle, for example, has a receiver clerk and has an office that actually is bigger in some ways and able to serve people efficiently, because there's always somebody in the office who knows how to do both receive the taxes and do the dog licenses. And, so there's some, and the timing works out in terms of when taxes are received and when, the dog licenses have to get renewed and things. I mean, that's not a good example because that's ongoing, but train station parking, for example. Thank you. And we heard a little bit from our interim clerk about her experience working in an office like that. And now having the experience of working in the clerk's office, having seen what it was like to have that dual role, even working for a few minutes in the receiver's office, pinch hitting, I think last December, she's had an opportunity to see what those functions are, and basically from her boots on the ground experience believes that those are easily combined in our jurisdiction as well as, elsewhere. And I believe, we have a receiver of tax in the audience. And while she isn't schooled in the rules and regs of clerk, we know if we look at what the description is from the civil service title for clerk, and if you want to talk a little bit more about that, Maddie, and how we envision, what the transition would look like for that department, those two departments, what that would look like. I think that, you could start to see how this fleshes out and how it's another step in the direction of more efficient government for the people. And especially as you hear about, the state cutting back on dollars that they give to communities like ours to help offset the property taxes, we're forced to look under every rock, and we continue to do so. And this is another rock to look under. So
from the residents' perspective, it should be seamless. It's the behind the scenes stuff that's happening in the office that they never see anyway. That's really going to be slightly different.
I mean, that's how we see it. I also, before we go into the other half of this, just sort of want to harken back to the survey results. I don't remember exactly the numbers, 170 some odd surveys I think that we got collected, which were overwhelmingly in favor of let's keep talking about this. Not, yeah, absolutely do it, but let's keep talking about it. Let's hear more about it. And so I just want to reiterate that, we're still open to ideas. We're not hearing a heck of a lot of negatives, so we're just sort of going with what sounds right. But, like the supervisor said earlier, the board is still listening. I mean, we still want to hear more.
I would anticipate if we are to go to the next step and we are to say, okay, you know what, public, it looks to us like, this is something that the public is interested in moving on. So we would like to put up a public referendum. And when would that happen, for example? So, for example, we could put up a vote in June, theoretically, with what is now the new consolidated primary date, when federal and state primaries and local primaries would be held, which would have the benefit of saving us money in a special election. And if we were to do that, then we would have to now back out of that, how much time we need for the public hearing process. And our counsel, Christy Tomadonna, would you like to discuss that a little bit?
So I don't know.
Well, I'm just telling you why, again, we would have, we would need to sort of come up with, to start, this would then be another opportunity for the public to weigh in. And we anticipate that if we were to put up a local law, right, draft a local law for approval to put forward the referenda, then we're going to start hearing from people who we haven't heard from up until now.
So you have to adopt the local law so it's a mandatory referendum. So for each, the way I envision it, and we'll have to talk more about this, is I think you would want to do individual local laws for each thing you're contemplating, because you don't want to lump it all together in case people feel differently about different things. But so the town board would need to adopt local laws for any and all of the things that you're contemplating more than 60 days before that primary election if you want to hold it on that date. So I'm not sure what the exact date is in June, but we would need to bounce back 60 days. That would need to be the date, the drop dead date for when the local laws are adopted. And then you're looking sometime in April. And then we would need to notice the public hearings. You need to hold the public hearings. You may want to adjourn them and continue them a couple of times depending upon the feedback you get. So the time frame is, it seems far away. You think June, it'll never happen, but it is a lot closer in terms of what needs to happen. And so I think that's why, this dialogue is continuing at this point. But as has already been said by Maddie and the supervisor, it is a requirement to do the public hearing as part of the local law. And so, that may attract a lot more commentary than what you've heard so far.
I think we kind of veered off topic of where we were.
Yeah, we can get back. We can get back to what the receiver clerk's office would look like.
Before you start that, so we have a temporary appointed who's doing a great job. Would the person who was appointed by us have to have all the experience for both these positions to be considered?
Let's take a step back.
That's why I'm asking.
Okay,
to
if
go
we're
all the way back.
So can we just wrap a bow around the highway part maybe, because that's a very different conversation.
All right.
So do we want to address anything more on the highway side of this? Okay. Did you have another question before clerk stuff? Okay.
Let's do the clerk stuff.
Okay. So our understanding from Westchester County Civil Service is that in other municipalities that have the sort of arrangement that we are proposing for the combined tax receiver clerk's office, it's both of the elected positions go away. They're what's called unclassified, which means you don't have to take a test. They're not appointed. They're just sort of unclassified, as it were. So what would happen is whoever it is that the town board appoints into that position would have two titles under Westchester County. They would be the tax receiver and they would be the town clerk. They would have two different hats that they wear. We thought, isn't there some combined position in civil service? The answer was not at this time. So it would be someone wearing two different hats. So basically if somebody came in to get a marriage license signed, they would sign it town clerk. If somebody came in to do something with taxes, they would sign it, same name, receiver of taxes. So it's one and the same person. The distinguishing factor between these two situations is that for the clerk receiver position, this would be, just by nature of the fact they're unclassified titles, be someone who's appointed to and serves at the pleasure of the town board. So they would have to fit all those qualifications in order for civil service to say, yes, this person is good, but they would serve at the pleasure of the town board. On the other side, for highway, because it's appointed off a civil service list, that person, once appointed and once they have Section 75 rights, they are an employee of the town. They no longer serve at the will of. So once they have the qualifications, if they pass the test, if they pass their probationary period, they now become an employee of the town. And in order for that person to leave, the town would have to file Section 75 charges to remove them. So it becomes very similar to like our union employees hiring someone into a competitive title for highway. So that's why I'm saying that's very different than this other position, which is someone appointed by this board, checks all these boxes, wears two hats, and serves at the pleasure of.
Okay, so checks all the boxes on the town clerk and the
Correct.
receiver of taxes, all
Which,
the education requirements.
again,
requirements.
for folks
I know
who
some of them cross. but-
don't see what we're looking at. For the town clerk, desired minimum acceptable training and experience, graduation from high school or possession of a high school equivalency diploma, and 4 years of responsible or supervisory experience. And then for receiver of taxes, graduation from high school or possession of a high school equivalency diploma and either A, 5 years of financial record keeping experience, or B, satisfactory completion of 60 college credits from a recognized college or university towards a bachelor's degree in accounting, finance, business administration, or related fields, and 3 years of financial record keeping experience, or C, a bachelor's degree from a recognized college or university in accounting, finance, business administration, or related fields, and 1 year of financial record keeping experience. So certainly the bar is higher for the receiver of taxes side of it, but at the very highest, it is a college degree and 1 year of accounting experience.
So then so for the shared position, you combine it then.
Correct. So the person must at the very least have the 1
Meet
year.
The higher threshold.
That's right.
So what about the village component of the clerk?
Village component. They basically just pay the town for a portion of the town clerk's
so even
annual
though it's
budget.
a town village clerk, that doesn't affect. Okay.
Nope.
All right.
It would still be two separate and distinct budgets. That's actually a really good question. So that office would not have a single budget. Whoever it was that was in that dual role would be annually preparing two budgets, because certainly the village is not going to want to pay for part of our tax receiver, right? So that's a very good point to have made. That's definitely something that's still going to have to stay separate. But that's, I mean, each of them has a very limited, 15 items or less budget to complete. So we could definitely keep that differentiated.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. And the percentage of time would be more challenging to calculate probably, but.
That's true.
I don't think the percentage of time is currently calculated.
That is also true.
Are you working on that?
So
That is also true.
so
Very true.
so that's a paper question, but so I don't know if that's a real question or a paper question, but it's a real question, but you know what I mean. You could always figure out percentages on paper. I don't know that, but I think that also is there somewhere that we have the summaries of the surveys and everything online where everybody has, and we can
Yeah,
promote?
absolutely. We've
Okay.
been, making sure to, every time, we have discussions, at the board level about Project Forward Anything, link to the YouTube video, link to
Okay.
whatever.
We'll make sure that this meeting, if we
Right.
even take the
Right.
section
So
out,
like we have,
will be up as part of that.
so yeah, so maybe we can promote that as well as, something in the
Yeah,
public.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I mean, it's certainly in the updates we have been, and we can continue to do so, through press release or other.
Yeah, maybe that's a good idea.
If there are any other suggestions, I mean, I know we're very reliant on the internet, but I know that there's also many people who, don't follow the supervisor's blog and don't watch us on GoTV. and
No.
I know, right? Imagine.
Everybody just love it.
So, if there are any suggestions either from the board or from council or from members of the public about how we can reach folks better, we're very happy and willing. And, we send postcards, to every to every
Yep.
parcel. I mean, we're really trying to, you know,
Right.
what's
But
the
also,
expression?
yeah.
Beat the bushes.
But also, I feel like we're at the point now where we kind of have to have consensus that we're willing to move forward on referenda. And if so, then we need to start the process of, putting together those local laws and getting that out to the public and moving, in the direction of starting to get that feedback from the public, so that we can, hold public hearings and schedule this and start working with the Board of Elections if in fact this is something that the board is ready to bite off.
So, question: is it going to be probably a Christie question? This will be three things: make the receiver of taxes appointed, make the clerk appointed, and the third one would be to merge the offices, and they will all go to three different referendums.
Nope. One is to make the highway superintendent.
No.
One is to make the clerk.
That's a different one. Yeah.
But there's no referendum to combine. It's
No.
there's
Once
one referendum
they're-
each for
once
each
they're-
position.
Once they become appointed, then you don't have to go to referendum to combine them.
Okay.
Is your question, what if one gets unelected and the other one continues to be elected?
That's a portion of it, but
And I think we would be able to work with that.
Mhm.
and if we combined it and we didn't like it, we could also
Uncombine
Well,
it.
look, the other thing too is,
throw that idea.
to Dana's point, you're taking a step in a direction. So whatever step that you make is still a step forward. So a lot of these things, I think, that, and depending on people's feelings, it's just really, really a good exercise to demonstrate, because most people, I don't think, really understand. And they're not thinking of it in the context of what does that do to the budget if you have somebody who's elected, and you could consolidate function, or you could streamline by focusing on the top, as you were saying, and making sure that the boots on the ground services are still going to be in place. So whatever you do is a step forward. So I think that all of those other things can come up during the referendum,
And
during
these
the public
salaries
hearing
are all something we
process.
set.
Okay.
Not the highway.
Not the highway. The part-time conversion to full-time, that is in our CSEA contract.
For clerk. I'm asking about the clerk in the tax office.
You set that. Yes, absolutely. But as far as the full-time deputies in the tax clerk office and the full-time administrator in the highway department, those are CSEA, so we don't have any say over those.
Okay.
But what's in here is what's happening in real life right now. Those are real numbers. I mean, I also would say, sort of, looking at this, there's a clear savings. We can quabble about how much it is, and that depends on a couple different things. But I mean, I would almost venture to say that, if boards in the past had had this level of information, if they had been able to unilaterally say, we're going to do this, if you think of the town like running a business, yeah, I mean, right? I mean, if you look at the numbers and, you're crushed by the tax cap, and now they're taking away the AIM funding, and just, the ceiling's getting lower and lower. If this was something that the town board could do without having to go to referendum, it probably would have happened already, it seems, based on the numbers that we're looking at. And, certainly we want to vet all these numbers through our controller and make sure that, he blesses everything and, he's happy with what we've come up with. But I mean, I think it's pretty indisputable at this point.
Yeah, I think that going to a referendum makes sense because, there's obviously a lot of people with a lot of different opinions, and it's a step forward. So, I mean, a referendum is the right thing to do. Let the people have a bigger conversation, and announcing the referendum sooner rather than later and moving on it will give people more time to get educated before they make their decision and vote. So I think that moving forward and announcing it would be good. I don't know how everybody else feels.
No, I think that's, yeah, I
Okay.
mean, that's the most important thing.
Okay. Fantastic.
So, I mean, this may be moving a little bit more quickly, but if it seems like there's a consensus, you may want to consider calling for the public hearing at your meeting next week to be held the last meeting in February, That way you give yourself some time and you're not backed up against the wall before
That's a
whatever
great
the
idea.
April deadline would be. And certainly
You're putting yourself in the position to get that
We
going.
can get started. That was gonna be my next thing.
I
Getting
really
these
just want to
local
make
laws
sure that
drafted.
the resident, I want everybody to
More
have
time
a
rather
chance
than
to
less.
feel heard.
Right.
You know, the
It's
more
like
time
several-
that they have to come to public hearing, I don't care how many we have to have, that the people have the chance to feel heard and discuss it and feel comfortable with knowing what they're voting on. I think that's the most important thing.
And if we're starting the process now, there's more opportunity.
Absolutely.
For longer
I think
public
that, you
hearings.
know,
You look at
it'll be talked
at
about
least
more.
3, maybe 4 meetings
Perfect.
that you can have the opportunity, and that's only if you're only holding them at your regular legislative
right.
sessions.
Okay.
All right.
All right, fantastic. Thank you all.
It was very helpful, Maddie. Thank you.
Yes.
You're welcome.
really was. Thank
There's
you.
actually more. So we've gotten. I mean, we've been driving Christy and our labor council batty, asking them a million different questions, and our poor person at civil service, I think, is ready to disconnect his phone. But there's certainly more. This is just the stuff that we really relied on to come to the conclusions on the front. But stay tuned because we have a couple more opinions from this one's from the comptroller. I think our labor council pulled a couple other ones that he wanted to share with you. So stay tuned.
Awesome.
So every year at this time, several of my board colleagues and members of our town staff attend the Association of Towns annual meeting, which is a great opportunity to learn about what's coming down the pike for New York municipalities, as well as share information with other neighbors about what is working and what isn't. Another component is that we are asked to vote on the annual legislation agenda. While many of these resolutions do not pertain to the town of Austining, for a variety of reasons, I wanted to ask the board if there were any topics in particular that you would want me to advocate for or against. I'm going to just highlight a couple of, as I mentioned earlier in my announcements, I had been down Portchester today to talk about the loss of AIM funding. And I would say that 3/4 of these resolutions are really asking the state to fully fund municipal government in a way that we believe would be helpful to keep our property taxes low. Many of these programs were frozen when the economy was not so good, but when the economy started to bounce back, they didn't ever unfreeze. And there's a lot of work to be done, especially in infrastructure, and most local roads, for example, most roads are maintained by local municipalities, most of the road miles. There's just not enough available money through the CHIPS program to help offset some of the costs for that. And I'm sure that there's many town residents who are frustrated by the fact that we haven't been able to rehabilitate roads. For example, I know Councilwoman Shaw, that your neighborhood really is in dire need of some rehab and hasn't really been able to be touched except for patched over the years. And that's because we really have to prioritize. We don't get a lot of that money. So again, most of the resolutions are sort of ongoing resolutions that the Association of Towns has taken on to advocate for funding for mandate relief and revenue sharing. So the state should fund unfunded mandates, and then shared service agreements shouldn't be mandated. They should be expected, but there shouldn't be always the stick. There should be more of the carrot that helps us to effectively make those shared service agreements. Preserving and strengthening home rule, relief from recycling mandates. We all want to continue to recycle, but as the money for recycling has started to dry up because much of the recycling was sent to China, it's harder and harder to maintain those requirements. So we're looking for help from the state to be able to do so. Increasing justice court funding. Many of the fees for translations or to commence actions haven't gone up for 20 to 40 years. But costs have gone up, and so a lot of these things haven't been maintained. The state asks us to stay within this mandated tax cap, but they themselves raise budgets by 2%. We don't get to raise by 2%. We get 2% or CPI, and CPI for many years was well below 2%, well below 1%. So if we're not able to, bring bring up the level of funding to meet the needs that way, then we need the help from the state, from the other revenues that other tax revenues that come in, to be evenly distributed, or I should say fairly distributed, based on whether it's population or road miles or whatever formula the state could come up with to fairly distribute a lot of the funds for infrastructure repairs. That's something that we're advocating for here. Increasing the number of DEC forest rangers, that seems like something that would only pertain upstate, because a lot of the upstate communities are advocating for that, where they have those bigger programs, but our unique area is actually policed by forest rangers, and we're hearing on a regular basis. And the unique area is in Cortland, but it's also impacted by and utilized by residents and visitors who come through the town of Ossining, go through Gerlach Park and through the aqueduct. The unique area is that little piece of land that's at the bottom of it's in town of Cortland. It's that little piece of strip of land that's near Silver Lake, but yeah, it's all the way down where we've had some accidents over the years, and unfortunately we've lost some of our visitors and residents because they drown, because they access the water from this area that's not safe.
Oh, the Croton River.
The Croton River, in the Croton River. Sorry, I forgot to say the Croton River. So yeah, that's critical. In the Croton River.
I'm like strip of land.
Yes.
Okay, there's a river.
Right.
Oh,
So
good.
anyway, but that is a piece of forest land which I think was then turned over and is still policed by the DEC Forest Rangers.
And they also police around the reservoir.
Right, and so therefore that might be DEP. I don't think that's DEC. So in any case, the forest ranger program, because it's been so underfunded and understaffed, and more land has been added to the forests, now it makes it more difficult for them to come down to what is a low priority area for them. Although we continue to work on that with DEC, with Croton, with Cortland, and Newcastle. Opposing the state takeover of utility property on private rights of way. Again, mostly all of these have to do with a way for local governments to get additional revenue as opposed to just property tax revenue. Whether it's local hotel occupancy taxes, sales tax distribution, restoring the full SALT and mortgage interest deduction, reform inequities in the property tax cap formula. And just one little sentence from that is calls for the tax cap program reform, such as exemptions for expenditures that improve public safety, invest in local infrastructure, address emergencies, acquire and develop open space, result from capital improvements mandated by government agencies' consent orders, and invest in municipal infrastructure to enhance economic capacity and community development, to be exempt from being within the property tax cap. And that's similar to what the state set up for school districts. So,
Before you go,
yes.
What's restoring the full SALT and mortgage?
Right, so
interest?
state
What is that?
SALT is state and local taxes, and that's the federal government imposed the $10,000 deduction as a maximum for you to deduct from your income tax for the property taxes that you pay, combined with any
Your
other
state taxes that you pay.
any taxes that you pay. You can now only deduct up to a maximum of $10,000, and that's impacting, especially in Westchester County, where we all acknowledge that we have high property taxes, making it very difficult for people. And many of us feel that this is a double tax. So you're being taxed on what you're already paying in taxes. So that's why we've been looking for a lot of workarounds for which we started with this whole charitable fund that we could set up, but then the IRS kind of said that there was no way that they were going to accept that. So we were waiting to hear if the school district wanted to allow that. They didn't. Neither of the school districts wanted to set that up. So we haven't pursued it. We still have a chance to do so for our town taxes, but it seemed
not
like
the
there
bigger
wasn't that's
Yeah,
not the big amount, and it didn't
that
seem like that
point,
there was
yeah.
a lot of momentum to do that. Although some communities, like the town of Rye, have done that. So, and I think
Is their school
Scarsdale
district go with them?
did. I don't believe so, and I don't think that. I think Scarsdale School District did. So, anyhow, any other questions or on any of these? Anybody want us to oppose any of them? Most of them are kind of common sense for, in my opinion, for towns.
I read them.
I like the legal notices one. I think we should have more options of where we can put the legal notices.
Yeah.
Well, there are pros and cons to that, but yes, I think it is good to have more
Even the cell
options.
phone service in the Adirondacks, you know, it was nice driving up there, and then all of a sudden Waze is like, it starts spinning. That was not helpful.
Okay,
So anyway.
without further ado, I think that we're good to go and vote in favor of
Feeling good
this
about your
legislative package. Okay. All right. So next up, solar pilot local law discussion. So as you know, at the end of 2018, we adopted a new local law regulating solar installations, which would allow for us to approve commercial solar, which could also be used for community solar. Just for those who aren't familiar with that, community solar is a way for you, if you aren't able to put, either don't own a house and you're a renter, or aren't able to put solar panels on your own house for a variety of reasons, whether it means you don't have enough southern exposure, or you have too many trees, your roof isn't in good shape. It's a way for you to tap into solar and help increase demand for solar by, it's basically like a share. You're getting a share of somebody's solar installation. So community solar is something that can happen in a commercial solar installation. And I do believe that the one interested party that was looking at Austining as a possibility, which kind of kicked us off in the direction of wanting to make sure that we had something established in our local law, was interested in putting something in place for community solar.
We didn't discuss this before.
Not a pilot.
Next, so we passed a local law
Yeah.
to allow this to happen. But as we were doing that, we received additional guidance through NYSERDA that communities who allow the state real property exemption, which is part of real property tax law section 487, we can put in place a local law that would allow us to adopt a pilot or payment in lieu of taxes plan to help add additional community benefit to these solar farms, which basically it'd be a way for us to collect some money while the state is saying you're exempt from property taxes. We could say, but we need such and such amount per kilowatt hour as a community benefit back from you.
It exempts them from the additional value of the property from the installation of the solar energy system.
So the state has a property tax
Real
law that
property tax
exempts
law
them.
47 that the supervisor
Oh, that's
just
not
mentioned.
helpful.
So so there's this exemption in place as a default. The municipalities can opt out of that, in which case this pilot provision is no longer available as an option. But the purpose of it is to make community solar affordable, and without having this exemption, it's been found to be sometimes prohibitively so. So this legislation contemplates giving them a break on their taxes for a period of 15 years for the value of the improvements that are part of the solar energy system, but also on the other end of it gives municipalities the opportunity to kind of split the difference and say, okay, well, you're getting this benefit, but, we also need to, get taxes and operate. So let's come to some sort of agreement with a pilot program that would be in effect for 15 years with an increased payments in order to balance that out over time.
And I did get a chance to speak to a representative from NYSERDA who is intimately familiar with this and said most of the Westchester communities are allowing the exemption and haven't even been talking about pilots at all. And so I said, well, is this going to make us less competitive then? And he said, absolutely not. more than anything, what developers are looking for is predictability. So if you have something in place, I knew you knew I was going to say that, right?
Yeah,
we just went to
actually, somebody else said that to me today on a completely different thing.
Yeah,
so,
it was
yeah.
So,
But
and
they
it
love
is-
that predictability.
Right, they really want predictability. So he was saying, no, I absolutely don't think that this is something that you should adopt. And then, you know, for whatever reason, if you see that it's becoming a stumbling block, you can go the other way, but it's something that you should adopt. And he recommended that we adopt it with a $10,000 per kilowatt fill in the blank charge. So he said, I think that the systems that we would basically be looking at would be between 1 and 5 kilowatt size. Okay, 1 and 5. I don't know what. 1 and
That's
5.
a one-time charge.
No, that would be annual.
Annual pay.
payments
Okay, that's
for 15
better.
years. For the 15 years that the
Because then
exemption,
no.
for the 15 years that the exemption is in place. So
And at the end of the exemption,
then it would be back on.
Then it
the
would be
tax
back
rate.
on then the full value of the property would be back.
Right.
And I think the
full value of the property,
Goes back
including
on
the
the-
installation.
with the improvements due
Okay,
to the
with the
solar
improvements,
energy.
because we're still getting the full value of the property and a percentage, and the 10,000 per kilowatt. We're not getting the full value of the property.
No, at the beginning, that's what the exemption is for. You're not getting the value of the property attributable to the improvements.
No, not attributable. I'm saying the base value before they built it.
Correct.
So we're still getting the base value
Yes.
and the
And
payment in
whatever
lieu of
the
taxes for 15.
But the pilot can't end up exceeding what the unexempted
Exemption,
value
right.
would be.
Right.
They can't end up
Okay,
having
yeah.
to pay more
Right.
than
It
if
doesn't-
the
would-
I
exemption
think that
wasn't
could
in
work.
effect.
Right. And I
Okay.
mean, the whole point of the
I get it.
exemption is to incentivize these
Right.
developments, right? So that's really what it's about. So, you know, so if the board is in favor of putting forward, and there you have a copy of the local law as well as the solar pilot toolkit that we got from NYSERDA, and we reviewed the local law with Fernando Gonzalez, our town assessor. And there's still a little bit more work that we have to do with the assessor and Office of Real Property just to make sure that this local law makes sense for us to adopt, and then we would make a recommendation for that amount. And then there's also an escalation rate that's built into the model local law, which we would get some guidance on as well. Right now, I don't think I actually got guidance for that escalation rate, but I'm guessing it would be 2% or something like that. Or
Yeah,
CPI,
it would
whatever. right?
gradually over time, I guess, work its way up to what it would be at the end of that 15-year period, however that works.
I guess so. I
Well,
don't know.
I
I don't
don't-
know if it would work its way up or if it would just go up by CPI because our costs go up.
I guess we have to look also a little bit more at like what these numbers actually look like and what the difference is. Another thing, you know, to keep in mind, and we were talking about this a little bit with the charitable contributions, is that this would only apply to the town. So the other taxing jurisdictions, the school district, the village,
Would have to also
would have to
adopt.
get on board on their own.
Correct.
So that's also a dialogue that we may want to get started if the town board is interested in pursuing this.
Okay.
I'd love to see a graph of the numbers. Thank you.
I can't, I don't, you know,
Right.
Matt, I thought it would,
Yeah,
it
no,
would be
you're right.
virtually the same. I don't really know what the numbers look like, what the difference is. And I mean, obviously you would imagine that it's significant in order to incentivize these types of projects. But so it may be, I don't know if we could get that information or if the assessor could probably help us put that together, but that may be useful to see as well.
All right. And finally, last but is there anything else on solar pilot? You guys are good? Okay. Now you know what we're talking about. Okay. Okay. So now the last thing I want to talk about is preparing for state legalization of recreational marijuana sales. So the governor introduced this concept in his remarks at the state of the state as part of the budget, what he's looking to put forth in 2019. And, we've already started to receive some feedback. People have been posting on social media, and we know that some local communities have already taken steps to put forth draft local laws to put some regulations in place. Two in particular that stand out are the Village of Pleasantville and the town of North Castle. So I wanted to take the time to sort of review a little bit about what they've been doing, and to think about and hear from the board about what you think maybe next steps should be. I just wanted to see what my notes were. I think that there's a lot to be said on both sides of this argument. I did have an opportunity to go to Assemblywoman Sandy Califf's forum that she held a month and a half or so ago on this topic, and it was illuminating. I mean, I spent a little time talking to a friend of mine who lives up in Needham, Massachusetts, because Massachusetts has legalized recreational marijuana use, and he's a pediatrician. And I asked him what he's seen as the impacts, and he said it's really too soon to tell. That the way that they've structured it in Massachusetts is my understanding that the town has to allow or kind of opt in to allow one of these dispensaries for recreational marijuana to open up. That hasn't happened yet in Needham, but they do have some medical marijuana dispensaries. So it hasn't really been long enough. I did have a conversation with one town supervisor today when I was at the AIM press conference, who said she has a relationship with somebody up in Massachusetts, I think in Northampton, where it is legal, and they have lines out the door. And of course, this is all anecdotal. And what we really need to do is take the time to really, if the state is moving forward with this, we have to be very conscious of how is it going to impact our community if we allow it to be sold, if we don't. And I actually liked the resolution that Pleasantville put together, more so maybe than the local law, because it really addresses, I think, what some of the key concerns are, and really just asks the state, I think, more than anything, to slow down and tread very, very carefully. I think, the argument for why to legalize marijuana is because this is happening across our nation, and if it's going to happen, we want to make sure that it happens in a way that's thoughtful and restrictive enough to not make this the total disaster in many ways that that tobacco has been in our nation. At the same time, prohibition hasn't existed for many years, and we've been able to regulate the sales of alcohol, and it doesn't necessarily mean that that's improved public health, but again, maybe we've had ways to regulate it, therefore we can tax it, therefore we can make sure that it's safer in the where it's sold and how it's and who it's sold to, and how we monitor safety and test for and impose fines on people, quality control, but also what happens when people are behind the wheel and driving, and all of the things that go along with people drinking. And then, those same sorts of things could be in place for marijuana that are in place for the sale of tobacco and the sale of alcohol. So maybe, again, there's an upside, and then you collect the money on those sales and use it to offset some of the public health downsides, which are seemingly happening anyway. If you talk to people and say, well, I was speaking to my pediatrician friend, and he's like, oh, well, everybody smokes pot anyway. Every teenager smokes pot anyway. Now, of course, then he, retracted that and said, well, maybe not everybody. And we know that, people do smoke or you use marijuana. So the upside to regulation and legalization is that you are now able to regulate it. You are now able to collect money, and you can get rid of what the black market. And then there's also an economic social justice issue that many people will talk about, which where people of color are more unfairly targeted for small crimes, possession crimes and having to do with marijuana. So there's more than one side. There's many sides to this issue. And I think that as the state moves forward, and if they do in fact legalize marijuana, that we just want to be poised to make sure that Ossining is addressing this in the safest way that we possibly can, thoughtfully, and in a way that I think we need to talk with law enforcement about it, and we need to hear from our community. And I guarantee you, we're going to be hearing more than one side. Although right now we're hearing mostly people who just say, just ban it. We're not sure we're even allowed to do that. I'm just going to read what Pleasantville had put together for the public to see also if the board wants to react at all to this. Whereas the proposed 2020 New York State executive budget includes plans to legalize marijuana and marijuana products for recreational use for persons aged 21 and older, and whereas this legalization may allow retail stores to sell marijuana products in the village of Pleasantville, and whereas the village board believes that the small scale of Pleasantville's commercial district makes it impossible to locate marijuana retail stores away from children's walking routes and child-focused facilities, therefore be resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Pleasantville demands that any state legislation that legalizes retail sale of marijuana products also includes provisions that allow the Village of Pleasantville to opt out of retail sales within the village borders. Be it further resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Pleasantville asks that Albany law and policymakers address the following major concerns in their further review of marijuana legalization.
So, just I think to just open up for discussion, if you want to read through this, but I think that the big the issues are, so there's taking in all these things into consideration. So we have Pleasantville doing a resolution and a very different approach in North Castle.
On the backside, on the flip side of this is their local law. So what's similar is that they're both saying we're going to be particular about where we're zoning, how we're zoning. And to me, this was kind of the meat and potatoes of it. I didn't.
I think what struck me is like all the, again, maybe there's some way we can go through this, because you have Pleasantville has a very, very well thought out rationale that talks about some of the, real facts about marijuana use. And it's shocking to me that pediatricians say, oh, everybody does it. I've heard it before. Alcohol is worse for kids. But the studies on marijuana and developing minds are quite staggering. Like it's not good news. And the link between
of course.
The link between mental illness. Yes. But I have I think that it's not, I'm not going to start equating it to other drugs and everything, but it's not necessarily as benign particularly for young people as we think. So I'm sorry, but just, I think that those are the things that we have to put in context. Like, we don't have to say, it's going to ruin, it's a moral issue or any of that stuff, but really just look at it from a purely fact position on public health. Yes.
Yeah. From a public health perspective, I absolutely agree. That is actually why I want to read the rest of this, because I think it does actually get into all of that, which is, the reasons why, what they're recommending that Albany needs to focus on, which is marijuana legalization and regulation should be addressed with standalone legislation. It shouldn't be embedded in the executive budget. The process should slow down. I can't agree more. Legislative review and debate about legalization must include testimony from independent experts from medicine, neuroscience, and behavioral health having no ties to companies seeking to engage in marijuana sales. If marijuana is legalized, legislation should affirm the home rule rights of municipalities to devise local zoning codes that minimize community impacts on minors. Legislation should restrict the sale of edible and vapable marijuana products, many of which mirror non-marijuana products that are attractive to minors. This includes products such as brownies, cookies, flavored gummies, hard candies, and lollipops. Legislation should prohibit advertising of marijuana products and should specify child-safe, secure packaging. Legislation should prohibit sales of marijuana to persons under 25 years old, not 21 as currently proposed. Sale of marijuana products should require 2 official forms of age identification, at least one of which bears a photograph of the purchaser. THC levels in all marijuana should be limited, regularly tested, and identified on packaging, along with guidance on dosing and text describing risks associated with use. Retail marijuana outlets should be licensed by the state, presently referred to by the governor as a proposed cannabis commission, after thorough background check and sourcing checks. Licenses should be subject to permanent revocation for a single violation of any regulations and should be punishable as a felony. So anyhow, I think that was interesting because, again, we don't know yet what the state law is going to look like. It's going to change. Right now it's a proposal by the governor, and the legislature hasn't really gotten their hands on it yet. And there's going to be a lot of back and forth, and a lot of these issues, even if they seem well thought out, might also have unintended consequences. Even as you pursue legalization, if you start saying, well, this one can opt out and that one can opt out, and everybody starts opting out, and you can only get it here and there, then you have the possibility of this black market popping up again back in between. So then you kind of defeat the purpose of the legalization. So there's a lot of arguments on all sides, again, as I said, that I've been hearing, and I think
There's a bunch of other considerations that we want to work. It's still illegal at the federal level, even if it's legal in New York. Places that have medical marijuana have a hard time with insurances. They can't use a bank, a federally insured bank. So there's often large sums of cash around or things like that. Like, we want to know exactly what are the constraints and what's going to happen, and what insurances can they get that we would prefer that kind of business to have, and what kinds of security are they going to have to employ, and what are they, do we want to have standards on that as well, and understand what the federal implications are. Also, they haven't figured out sobriety testing for people.
Absolutely.
And how is our law? That's one thing we have to talk to our law enforcement about. How are we going to determine if somebody's driving with too much THC in their blood? And what are the up and coming tests that can show that? And I really want to understand how we know if somebody's driving impaired on that and is working impaired on that and things like that. And there's a lot of questions that, that they're going to be working at the state level. I don't think this even covers all of it. So, what? And of course you don't want to.
Well, if you want to add anything, certainly if we wanted to add anything to this, if we want to adopt something similar, I just wanted to get a sense from the board, where do you want to go? I don't feel like we want to be first or last in this.
I don't feel like we can react to something that isn't drawn yet. For the state's not got it.
But then there's also the possibility of having legislation in place preemptively, because then you can say, well, this has been in place. And Christy, do you want to comment on that at all?
Well, I think the way the state law is currently drafted, I don't think first of all, these are drafts, what Pleasantville and North Castle, are proposing. Nothing's actually been adopted yet, but they are in the process of considering it before their legislative boards. As the supervisor mentioned, if this state law does get passed, I don't know that the local municipalities at the village and town level will be in a position to have an outright ban on the books, because if the state's already regulated it. What North Castle did is adopted zoning regulations that pretty much say where you can and cannot put retail establishments for marijuana, and they actually do address security. So
Right.
you
So
may
like
you may want to take a
Lighting, security,
right
stuff that are
locations, the amount of
How many you can have
location
with residential,
near
you
school.
can't have
establishments you can have. Yeah.
Can't have it as part of a building with residents in it. Can't have it near residents. Can't have it within 500 feet of another one.
Right.
So-
So their mentality was, And I'm basing this on newspaper articles. So, I mean, I'm not trying to put any words in their mouth, certainly, but the goal appeared to be, we see what's happening, let's do something. And then now they have something on the books. Now wait and see what happens. And if based upon what the state law is, we need to adapt or adjust, they may be in a better position to do that more quickly. Assuming they do go forward with this.
Okay, so
which
they've
they
already
haven't
gone
yet.
through the public hearing.
No, they have a public hearing
I mean,
scheduled
but
in
I'm saying
February.
they will have gone through.
Yeah, assuming they do go forward with it, but that based upon the newspaper articles, that was my understanding. And the position of Pleasantville and I think the town of North Hempstead in Long Island also did actually adopt a ban, I believe. And their message is basically what was in the resolution is, let's slow down. Let's talk about this more. We're not necessarily universally opposed, but this needs to be done. To make it part of the budget, it would have to be adopted by April 1st, which is very soon. So I think, the municipalities and the legislative boards are using the control and the voice that they have to try to send messages to the state, depending upon what it is that they're feeling about all of this.
I'm not necessarily proposing a complete ban in my mind, but I
So
think there could be places that it would fit, but not a lot of them. So
You get
what
a
North
sense from-
Castle is more.
I think we should go with something. Just I like the preemptive approach, although it may get kiboshed later. But I think we should be putting something out there, and I like to go slow, get more information. But I think it would be good to have something preemptively on the book.
So one of the I think one of the advantages of legalizing marijuana is that you have more opportunity for safety and just around selling it and messaging and putting it in a public health context. I think it's other than to say doing things that are legal or bad, it's harder. I think in some ways you're not if you're buying pot now, it's not necessarily going to come with any warning labels or anything, and you don't necessarily know. It's a scary thing. So it also can be kind of a sketchy business too, and I think there's a lot of elements of legalizing that puts controls that are not there now, and I think access is probably I think access is pretty good as far as I can see. There's no problem accessing it now. So this might actually, having it sold this way might actually, help guide access to people who are mature enough to make that decision. But I do think that we have to have something preemptive and something written, if only to sort of reiterate some of these things. Like, again, the Pleasantville resolution is very fact-based. It's based on not judgment, but fact. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's important because I don't think judgment is I don't have a judgment on this. I don't think it's a moral issue. I do think that if you're gonna, put something in your body, you want to know what it's all about and how it's going to affect you. So I think that's the way to go. And I think that at least it's a opportunity to get the discussion out early and get people talking about it.
I don't exactly know what you're suggesting.
No, but what I was saying is by doing the preemptive approach, we're talking about early, we're making it known. It's part of public awareness, even in just putting it in that context.
Just listening to all this, I agree and I disagree. Because you're saying if people wanna smoke, they need to know what they're putting in their body. Do you know how many people are dying and don't care what they put in their body? They die with the syringes in their arms. I'm just saying, the most people are gonna buy this stuff is not people who who respect the law a whole lot. I don't think. That's my opinion. Now, if the young people get a problem getting it here, they're gonna go back where they've been getting it in the first place.
Mhm.
And the prices
On
are
the street
gonna
corner.
get to be competitive. They're gonna be, you know, if you $5 more, you're gonna come down to where these guys are in the stores are selling it. So it's gonna be. I don't understand a whole lot of how that this you can already imagine how this is supposed to work, because the same thing with liquor. It took a long time for them to get people to stop making their bathroom gin and bathtubs and whatever, and all that. But they still, and they still, we still drink and we still drive and we still killing people driving. And now you're gonna get this legal so you can have two things. I'll take a puff and I'll take a drink. I don't know. I don't, if I had to vote right now, I don't know what I would say. Because I just can't fathom what's coming down the pike here.
Well, I mean, I think what I'm hearing from the board is that maybe what we do is we do some kind of combination of, you know, sort of establishing some of the rationale behind some kind of regulation here in Ossining, and then saying that if, you know, that we would, if we are to, you know, if it becomes legalized, we want to be in charge of where it goes and have that be pretty restrictive. If in fact we even want to go there. So I think what we could do is, and honestly, I can't quite figure out where that would be, because even our one area of commercial business, which admittedly, what?
A lot of kids.
Has one proposed childcare, one existing childcare, another two after school programs that happen, you know, along that route. So I'm not exactly sure where this could exist that in the town unincorporated that wouldn't be near walking distance from child.
Could sell in the gift shop. No, kidding.
Yeah. So what are you talking
Club
about?
Fit could sell it in the gift shop as a child care center. Club Fit.
Oh,
I know.
Club Fit. Oh, Club Fit.
Yeah, I know
I
that.
didn't hear you say that.
Actually, they have a child
I
care
thought you said
center
it was
there
his
too.
name.
So that's
Okay.
over.
Yeah, that's yeah. So I was thinking about, you know, whatever the
About 4 child care
places.
centers on that street.
Well, whatever we need to do, we need to do. I guess.
So I think maybe if we could craft something that's similar to, you know, Pleasantville's in terms of fact-based, identifying, you know, the need to advocate to the state to really be very, you know, thoughtful how they proceed, and then
So that's just a resolution.
That's a
that
resolution.
you, and as it was drafted, you know, the last whereas resolved clause directs sending the resolution to the state.
Right.
Yeah, but that's not a local law of
No,
any
and
sort.
then-
That's just a statement.
so right. So I'm saying, but twofold.
Right.
So and the second part would be to draft some kind of a zoning with very stringent regulations.
You
So it
may
would be
wanna
a
get
hybrid of
David.
North Castle and Pleasantville.
Right. So
Or
I
two
mean,
separate.
honestly, Pleasantville does the same thing, except for they pretty much say there's not a spot in town that you could have. I think that you
Oh,
can come
okay.
out and
Yeah,
ask for
actually,
the
right,
outright ban.
They have to be exempted in the event that the state law is passed.
Right.
Just because they can't. Yeah.
So, but if you want to do zoning regulations that involve, you know, locations and where in town would and could potentially be a good fit, you may want to
Right.
get David Stallman involved.
And I have a question. Do we have regulations on where liquor stores can be?
I believe so, but I don't.
So I'd like to look at that code
Yeah.
and see if we can't kind of build on that.
Well, we did
It's-
have the issue with the smoke shop in the high school that was eventually
village.
closed. That was a well,
Yeah.
you know, I still
Right, and so on a walking
I'm holistic
or
about
like near,
Austin.
you
By the
know,
way, there is a smoke shop that's still within pretty close walking distance to 5th grade.
yeah.
So where?
Roosevelt School.
Yeah.
a lot of this is proposed to be handled. I mean, I don't want to generalize it, but a lot of these provisions are going to be included in the alcohol beverage control law. So I think they're intending to control and regulate this
At the state
in
level.
ways
Okay.
similar to the way
Way the state-
alcohol is
okay.
being controlled
Right, so
now.
that's, I
Like
mean,
they
I
would
think,
need to get a license not the same way, but in a comparable manner to the way restaurants now get liquor licenses, and municipalities will be notified in advance in that type of process.
okay, so that makes me feel better.
But there's kind of like, I know it's all relatively new, but you have Colorado and you have California where isn't there a learning from that as well?
Yeah, I mean,
Some of the patients.
accident rates, they
Yeah.
have no way, again, there's no real way to.
I know that the accident rates of the driving accident rates have gone really high. So
Yeah, and then I think
to
that,
Northern's point, yeah.
again, then you see Massachusetts going a little slower, trying to take some of the learning and see what the results are of their more restrictive legislation. It hasn't been helpful.
And that vape thing, what that thing they smoke, which blew up in somebody's face. Was it today?
A couple days ago.
Everything.
A couple days ago.
A
Killed
vape
'em.
pen blew up.
Yeah, in someone's face.
And killed them.
We've heard those.
Killed 'em?
stories.
Did not hear that.
Okay, so we will work on coming up with some sort of a resolution and proposed zoning.
Resolution is a lot easier. You could probably get that on for next week. Obviously,
Okay.
the local law will take a little bit more time.
Okey-doke. Thank you. So with that, I have very unfortunate news, which is that I am going to ask for a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We have a regular meeting scheduled for next week, February 12th. At that meeting, we are expecting to have a special presentation from our friends from up at SUNY New Paltz from the Benjamin Center on our homestead study. And we look forward to the public joining us. And then we're also going to have a town hall meeting that's going to be dedicated to discussing the findings from that study. And that will be on March 5th at Austin Public Library. So we're hoping to hear from the public and see the public. Our meeting next week with Mr. Benjamin, Mr. Citrino, will be a work session part of our meeting, and then we will go into our regular meeting following that. So with that, I wish you all a wonderful week. And as mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, there's an awful lot of wonderful things going on around Austin, and we hope to see you around the block. Okay, we already had the motion. Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you.